The lesson today is on writing task 2 and increasing your task achievement score. So for many people who need their band 7 on writing and who need 7, the grammar can take a very long time to improve from a 6 to a 7. You need a lot of error-free sentences. If you look at the success criteria here, this what you're looking at right now we call a rubric, and a rubric lists all of these success criteria. And the success criteria for writing task 2 are based on task achievement, coherence, cohesion, lexical resource, which means vocabulary, and grammatical range and accuracy. So to get up to 7, you need frequent error-free sentences. So about half your sentences have to be error-free, and this means the complex sentences. You can't just write a whole bunch of simple sentences, baby sentences that are completely perfect. That's not going to work very well, because this score is also based on your range, not just the accuracy. And range means they want to see a variety of complex sentence types. Band 6, you can have a lot of mistakes, like all over the place, and you'll still be fine to get band 6 on grammar, but to get up to 7 can take quite a long time. So what we're going to focus on is how to get task achievement from 7 to 8. Because if you can get task achievement up to 8, you can do 8, 7, 7, 6, and you're going to end up with a band 7. So what's the difference between a band 7 on task achievement and a band 8? So to get band 7, you need to address all parts of the task. So you need to provide reasons, you need to provide examples, okay? Because that's what they tell you to do in the instructions. And you have to answer the question properly, obviously. Okay? Your position has to be clear throughout the response. Okay? It says here, presents, extends, and supports main ideas, but there may be a tendency to overgeneralize and or supporting ideas may lack focus. Okay? In a nutshell, this means the writing is still a bit vague, V-A-G-U-E. Right? To get to band 8, it says presents a well-developed response to the question with relevant, extended, and supported ideas. This is the key word here. It's the extension of your ideas. And that's what we're going to talk about today. A couple things I want to point out to you, though. The way that this rubric works, if you satisfy criteria in a higher category, so let's say the examiner decides, okay, you've sufficiently addressed all parts of the task, you do have well-developed and you do have extended ideas, but if one of your ideas is vague, or heaven forbid, some of your ideas are unclear or inadequately developed, then you will get the lower score. So even if part of your work is at a band 8 level, if any of your work satisfies a lower criterion, then that is the score you get. Okay. What that means is, if the examiner has to reread any part of your work, it's going to be less than 8. Okay. And this is something I've mentioned many times before. The better the writing, the faster it is to market. The more confusing the writing, the more times we have to reread it to figure out what's going on, the lower your score is going to be. Okay. At band 8 level, I don't need to reread anything. Moving on, if any idea is vague, it's going to be below band 8. It's going to be a 7. And if the examiner is confused by any part of your work, it's going to be below 7. Okay. Any questions so far about how the marking work or about any of these criteria? Okay, so we're going to look at some examples today and spend a lot of time talking about how we can get our writing to that higher level. So I'll show you one example of a student written essay. Overall, this one got a 7.5. Task achievement was 8 on this one. Coherence, cohesion, 8. Lexical resource, an 8. Grammar was a 7, as you can see from the number of mistakes here. It's really, really hard to get an 8 on grammar. The range was an 8, which means the student had a very wide variety of sentence structures, but the accuracy is a 7, and that's all the red mistakes that you see. Okay, so this is a high 7. This is roughly how many grammar mistakes you can have and still get a 7. Okay, so it's hard. Grammar includes article issues, even these small little article issues, because the examiner is looking for how many error-free sentences you have. And error-free means literally no errors, no punctuation problems, no article issues. So it's a very high bar. All right, let's read this one together. So the prompt was, space exploration is enormously expensive for taxpayers. What are the advantages and disadvantages of spending money on exploring space? Nowadays, space exploration is costly, and the massive amount of money required for it can be a burden on taxpayers. Although some people think space exploration will take away the funds that can be spent on other important social programs, some believe that investing in space can intrigue children's curiosity in scientific studies, thereby encouraging future generations to make more scientific progress. I'm correcting the mistakes as I go along. Okay. Most of your marks are in the body paragraphs. Okay. So what you'll see in the, I'm going to show you two other examples a little bit lower, a little bit lower on this page and a little bit later in the class. They're written by an examiner. And what you'll notice is the intro is quite a bit shorter. This is unnecessarily developed in the sense that according to the marking scheme, your development takes place in the body paragraphs. So it's okay to have a really short introduction and a really short conclusion because the examiner doesn't really have any marks to give you there. So you don't need to write a very detailed thesis statement in the introduction. It's enough just to state your position. And we'll see that in a couple examples. So let's look at the first body paragraph. To begin with, space exploration might detract from funds that can be spent on other important social programs such as public transportation, healthcare, and educational services. In other words, understanding the universe and space is not as urgent as solving our current problems on Earth. For example, if the colossal amount of money spent on sending humans into orbit could be used to build free highways and subways, carry out free educational programs for more students or adults, and provide more insurance coverage for illness and medicine, the quality of taxpayers' life would be largely improved. Thereby, people would be happier and social and international disharmony would be diminished. This proves the practicality of spending taxpayers' money on things that are most useful and beneficial. Okay. On the other hand, funding space exploration and promoting space discovery programs can raise children's interest in science, and eventually they can become scientists themselves. In other words, curiosity is the foundation for learning and understanding. With curiosity being provoked, it is highly likely for children to pursue science or science-related subjects which contribute to modern inventions and technological advancement that can be employed in our daily life. For example, robotic sensors and artificial muscle systems were originally designed for space vehicles, but now they're used in artificial limbs. As another example, shock absorbers designed to protect equipment during space shuttle launches are now used to protect bridges and buildings in areas prone to earthquakes. These scientists who invented these wonderful designs were once the children greatly inspired by space programs in their childhood. These examples highlight the vital impact space exploration plays on total scientific contribution. To conclude, although space exploration costs taxpayers a large amount of money, in the long term, it can push scientific innovation forward and enhance human prosperity. Okay. What did she do here to merit a band 7 on task achievement? How does her writing differ from most of the writing that you produce?
I have a question. Why systems are originally designed? There's mistake. Should be where?
Yeah, past tense.
Okay. I think the difference between her and us is that I liked when she said in both body paragraph she explained the thesis in another word, like when she said like here in the beginning. Yeah, on the other hand, in the other words, yes, we missed the. I think we just like copy paste the graphs and put it in another word. No, we should like be more creative. Like,
Yeah, so this is task 2. We're not
I
not
know.
task 1. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not about creativity. The word we use is extending your ideas. Is extension. It's providing more details. It's providing more flavor. So one of the number one complaints that English teachers in particular have about student writing is that it's thin. Right?
Yeah, and vocabulary too.
Yeah. So it
Like here in the word. Because here, what is it? Like about the money.
Yeah. So for
example, something like that.
So if the colossal amount of money spent on sending humans into orbit could be used to build free highways and subways, and then she mentions 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 uses of money instead of space, the quality of taxpayers' life would be largely improved. Okay, what would happen? People would be happier, and social and international disharmony would be diminished. She just continues on and like pulls these ideas out and develops them to the next logical conclusion. Right. How about in the other body paragraph?
So here in our sentence it should be dot, right?
Yes. Right, so here, for example, she provides a couple examples. Right, she's talking about space exploration raises children's curiosity. Eventually, they can become scientists themselves. Right? Why is this important? Because curiosity is the foundation for learning and understanding. What happens then? When children are curious, then they often pursue science-related subjects. Why is that important? Because these contribute to modern inventions and technological advancement that we can use in our daily life. Then she gives a couple great examples of that. Robotic sensors, artificial muscle systems, which were originally designed for space vehicles, but now are used in artificial limbs. She gives another example. Shock absorbers that protect equipment during space shuttle launches are now used to protect bridges and buildings in areas prone to earthquakes. Right? And then she connects it back. The scientists who invented these wonderful things were once the children greatly inspired by space programs in their childhood. Like this is really thoroughly developed. What do you think is easier? Getting your grammar up to 7 or doing something like this?
I think a grammar.
This is a 7 in grammar, right? If
Yeah.
her grammar were lower and it were typical of the kinds of issues that the people in this group have, for example, she would still get 7, right? Because the topic development and coherence cohesion are at a band 8 level. Even if your vocab is like a 7, your grammar is 6, but then you can get coherence cohesion and task achievement up to 8, you're going to get a 7. But it involves extending these ideas. You're trying to paint word pictures. That is what she has done here. Right? All these examples here. Is it easy to visualize this? Right? Is it easy to understand what she's talking about? Yeah, I think it's very easy to do so, right? Without these examples, this would be an abstraction. You can't visualize this. This is an abstract idea. It needs these examples to come to life. These wonderful examples down here, very easy to visualize this and understand how this supports her ideas. Right? But she's also made it very explicit. I think this is one of the issues that we all suffer from, is that we think the connections between our ideas are clear to the reader. I mean, they're clear in our mind because it's our work. So we think our ideas are connected like this, but when the reader reads it, it's not as clear to the reader. So you have to make those connections very explicitly. Don't assume that the reader will understand how your ideas are connected. Just write it out in full for them. Okay. How long were these paragraphs? So these body paragraphs are, this is 147 words. This is 130 words. All right, so about 280 on the body paragraphs. Your word count needs to be about 330, including the intro and the conclusion. That's roughly what you're aiming for. And you need to be able to do this in about 35 minutes. That's including the outline, just to give yourself 5 minutes for proofreading. Okay, that's the goal here. Are there any questions about this example essay? Because we're not going to do this prompt today. I just wanted to show you what a student essay looks like at a higher level. Okay, let's go on to our prompts for today then. Newspaper and TV news stories often have accompanying photos. Some people believe that these images are more influential than words. What is your opinion about this? Give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Okay, what do you think about this question?
Yeah, I think we have to give more examples to give the clear pictures about our understanding to the question.
Mm-hmm. So with this particular question, let's just talk about it first before I show you the example. Let's pretend this is a speaking question. Okay, newspaper and TV news stories often have accompanying photos. Some people believe that these images are more influential than words. What do you think?
Yeah, you have to give more pictures, less words.
Okay. Tell me more. Let's say you wanted to talk about this topic with a child, like maybe a kid in grade 7 or 8. How would you discuss this topic with a child? How would you prove this idea that photos are more influential than written words?
Yeah, I can show him a book of pictures only, so without writings.
Why do newspapers use stories? Why aren't newspapers just text only?
Yeah, maybe a space constraint. So pictures can take more space than articles or
Mm-hmm.
Different language can understand the text.
Yeah, but I think most newspapers assume that their readers are in that language. But what's the reason for providing photos at all?
yeah, they can speak to all ages, can speak to all to different speakers. So it's like a music, you know. There is no language for music, so it can deliver the information to everybody.
Good. Can deliver the. Let's say regardless of education level or
Yes.
language. Okay. Or age, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, tell me more.
Easier to get the message. Like you don't really need to read the whole passage. You can just get an idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it helps people get the message more quickly. We can even say instantly.
I could say pictures are more attractive to the people, so they can. It's more than text, you know. Some people are lazy to read all the text if it is too long. I mean, long text.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're missing something here because the prompt says some people believe that these images are more influential.
It is attractive than, it's very eye-catching.
Okay, how does that make them more influential?
Oh, like you tend to, like looking at the picture, you tend to read it without just passing it.
Sorry, can you explain that last part?
Like without just passing the paper, you tend to like look into the article by glancing through the picture if it's really attractive.
Okay. I'm going to use this word compels people to look.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'd like you all to think of some really powerful pictures from the news. And
can we say like usually the picture touching the touching the emotion of people are more effective than the word?
let's say emotionally powerful.
Exactly.
I'd like you all to try and think of a picture that has affected you greatly, something from the news that you've seen. Can anyone recall any such powerful pictures? Because this, you really need an example for this.
Yeah, like what happened last month? The policeman killed the
The American guy, yeah.
Black Lives Matters campaign. His name is George, I think.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So what was the effect of such imagery? How is that the picture of the police killing this man, how is that more powerful than just a story using words? Because this is what you have to explain. This is the challenge here for this task.
Because we saw how a person pin him down by his knee. So it's really emotional because we don't want anybody to go through such a pain. So that photo, yeah.
Okay, let me just write this down. Allows the reader, or allows the audience, I'll say, to empathize. What does empathize mean?
Showing the feelings, like hatred or like heartfelt warm feelings.
Mm-hmm. So let's say, okay. Any other very recent examples, maybe from the last few days, of some powerful imagery? Powerful, shocking imagery from the last couple of days?
The bomb blast in Lebanon.
Yeah. So when you saw those pictures of that explosion, what is the difference between seeing those pictures versus just reading about it or hearing about it on the radio?
Make you like feel the reality, give you clear image.
Yeah. So what kinds of things did you see in those pictures that no words could convey? This is a good word here. Convey means like share or transmit information.
I think the action, it show actions.
What kind of action?
The vibration of
The vibration, the movement.
Yeah, the vibration of
the damage.
Okay, so it showed the extent of the damage. Can you be a little bit more specific?
Damage of buildings or damage of dead people.
Even the crater, right? The bomb crater. It's enormous.
And like even for this bomb, like 50% of its power went on the ocean. Like this is only 50 because like 50 went on the ocean. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Ian, what does crater mean?
Crater is like if you look at planets like the moon, it's all those holes that pockmark the surface, like from meteorites hitting the moon.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So you say when a
Major.
bomb explodes, it makes like a bowl shape. That's a crater.
Okay.
Okay, so there were some videos too, right?
Yeah.
You know what? Let's not talk about the videos because the prompt says photos, and we don't want to stray off topic. Okay, there's a picture that I saw that was very moving. Image of
People in the sky.
no, this was an image of a firefighting team.
No, the group, like,
Yeah, and they were dead like minutes after that picture was taken.
Oh no.
And they're like smiling in there. You can see the camaraderie, that they look like a nice team that works together very well. They're smiling. They have no idea what's coming next.
Seriously.
So this is, again, it goes back to empathy. Empathy means being able to share another person's emotions. And pictures really help with that in a way that words often cannot. I mean, other famous pictures that I can think of is people, you know, the falling man. So the famous pictures of people falling off the World Trade Center, people
Yeah.
who had jumped. There's the image of, was it last year or 2 years ago that on the Mediterranean, it was people fleeing, I think, the Middle East trying to get to Europe, and it was a picture of the child that had drowned, but had washed up on shore.
In Syria, yeah.
Drowned Syrian refugee. There was the famous picture. It was a naked Vietnamese child. Viet. It's a very famous picture of a young girl. She's completely naked. She's running down the street together with other people who are fleeing a napalm strike during the Vietnam War.
Yeah, it was #1 in National Geographic cover magazines.
Yeah, so what is the power of such pictures? Why are they so powerful compared to just words?
I think it's showing feelings,
Because of the
show
empathy.
emotions, right?
How does empathy happen? Some of you are doctors. Maybe you know this. The mechanism. You know, mirror neurons, I wouldn't talk about this necessarily unless you're quite familiar with it, but mirror neurons in the brain mean that when we see other people, then the mirror neurons in our brain kind of align or synchronize to allow us to share the emotion that we're seeing. Right, and this doesn't happen when you're only reading. Right, if you see a sad face, you're not going to start smiling, right? You also get kind of sad and you're interested in why this person is sad, and that doesn't happen when it's just text. Are there any other famous images that you can think of that might be easy for you to talk about? I know that some of these are difficult subjects, so I apologize if this is.
Yeah, I remember one of the pictures, like I think 5 or 6 years ago, that was in South Arabia, where they chopped the head to criminals, and the area is called Chop Chop Square. So basically, is a guy laying on his knees on that square. Everyone is looking, and the picture show one of the Arabic people cutting his head with a sword, and then the head just chop, rolling on the floor. So that was really shock, and it was also in National Geographic magazine. So basically, the images show a lot of empathy. I mean, and shock. I think what images represent is emotion. It gives you feelings, good or bad. So sometimes you don't have to read. It's basically giving you a lot of information, tons of information in one image.
Yeah, I mean, we're hardwired to be this way, right? We can't help it. You see a shocking image, you can't help but look at it. You have no choice in the matter. Okay, is there anything else we can say about this topic?
Yeah, I just want to clear the difference between picture and video. So the understanding of the question is very important. We shouldn't mix between videos and photos or pictures. You
Yeah,
know,
photos only.
yeah.
Let's have a look at an example. Okay, so this one comes in at 350 words, and this one was written by an examiner. And I'll just go through it with you. The media use imagery to attract people's attention to news stories, and the reason for this is that pictures have universal appeal. Your mother tongue, religion, or age can affect what you read, but photos resonate with us all. This is why I believe they're more influential than words. This is the word I was looking for. What does resonate mean? Does everyone know what a tuning fork is? So this is a tuning fork. And when you bang one of these tuning forks, it starts vibrating. And if you take a second tuning fork and you put it near the first one, the second tuning fork will start vibrating at the same frequency as the first one. You don't need to touch them or anything, it just does. That's what
this is for test hearing bone conduction, and in Europe they put it on the skull. If the ears, like you have bone conduction hearing loss, the vibration will only goes to the bone side or away from the bone side. The neural will be on the same side.
Okay, so that's an example of resonance, right?
Yeah.
So we've got this root sound. This is the French word for sound. So this is a great word. If you're giving a presentation and the audience agrees with you, or the audience thinks that what you're saying is a great idea, you could say, my ideas resonated with the audience. They really supported what I was talking about. Okay. So main idea here is photos resonate with us all. That's why I believe they're more influential than words. Okay, they have universal appeal and they resonate with us all. First body paragraph. Having a photo accompanying a news story in a newspaper helps us remember what we have read. Newspaper circulation has declined considerably, and free papers are now the norm in London, where I'm from. The only time people have time to read these papers nowadays is on the train when commuting to and from work, when you're usually tired. Newspapers know this, and this is why these newspapers use so much imagery. The University of Essex released a research paper in December last year showing that the human brain can process images up to 60,000 times faster than words because we're programmed to be more visual. Their study found that people could remember more than 2,500 images with at least 90% accuracy for days after initial exposure. So if a news story has a photo alongside it, we're able to remember it more clearly. Okay. So the topic, the reason, the controlling idea is that photos increase memorability. Okay. How does the author extend this idea in the body paragraph? Okay, so photos increase memorability. How does he then extend this idea? Safa? He starts off with this topic sentence. How does he bring this idea to life? Remember, your goal, as much as possible, is to create pictures in the mind of your reader. I mean, not just for this topic, it's kind of coincidental that we're talking about this and talking about creating pictures in the audience's mind. But how does he bring this idea to life?
Like you said, like some people who cannot read when they are at work or come from work tired, so they just look at image to make them like remember what's the things.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a real life situation.
Yeah.
Okay. Free papers are common. They're the only time people have time to read these papers. Like almost nobody orders a newspaper anymore. When I was growing up, I had a paper route, and it was one house after another that I was delivering newspapers to. Now, hardly anyone. So now we just have these free newspapers which they hand out on the TTC. Okay, and when do people read these? When they're commuting to and from work, and very often this is when people are tired. Right? He connects it back to the topic. Newspapers know this, and this is why they use so much imagery. Because if you're tired, you're not going to be in a mood to read something that's very text heavy, right? People want something light that has imagery, that has, video if they don't have imagery. Then he backs it up with a research study. Okay, it's 2 sentences that talks about the actual power of the imagery. And then he ends off with a significant statement. So if a news story has a photo alongside it, we're able to remember it more clearly. Next body paragraph. The TV news, so he is mentioning TV news, but he mentions that it's specifically photos. They use photos to clarify their reporting when words are not enough. Often the news reports on complex international issues and photos help people understand either the seriousness of the issue or where the incident took place. So this could very well relate to the explosion in Lebanon, right? You can't understand how serious that explosion was without seeing images of it. Just reading about it versus seeing the images is a completely different experience. For example, with the current COVID-19 crisis, the BBC News reported on how London was very quiet in the evenings after the government advised people to work from home and not socialize unnecessarily. The image that accompanied the story was of Oxford Street, one of the busiest streets in Europe, empty. This image was shocking for a lot of people and drove home the seriousness of the situation and what was happening in the country. Words would not have had such an effect in this situation. Okay, so this is our controlling idea. You need a photo to clarify the situation because words don't do justice to what's happening. There's some really good vocabulary here. Words often cannot do justice to what has happened. What does cannot do justice mean?
Cannot describe, cannot give enough description about what's the reality.
Yes, exactly. They're insufficient to convey the reality. Right. This sentence, these two sentences, you can just copy word for word. Try and memorize them. This image was shocking for a lot of people, and this is a great phrase, drove home. What does drive home mean?
Bring in the memory.
Not exactly. Drove home the seriousness of the situation. I showed her a picture and it drove home the seriousness of the situation. The patient didn't take me seriously. I had to show the patient an X-ray, and that finally drove home the seriousness of the situation. What does that mean?
Like, can show the seriousness.
Yeah, again, it means it really conveyed that the person finally got it. Drove home means it really got inside the person's head, finally.
Like finally make the idea clearly.
Yes, exactly. Okay, and a very short conclusion. Newspaper stories are, of course, influential, but it's my firm belief that it is the photos that accompany them that stay with us for longer and are therefore more influential. Okay. 357 words. Any questions or comments about this one?
Does it need also a conclusion, John?
That was the conclusion. One sentence.
I see.
Don't spend a lot of time on the intro and the conclusion. That's not where the marks are. You need an intro and a conclusion, but it should be short. Right? Conclusion, just summarize your two supporting reasons very, very briefly. Restate your position and summarize very briefly the two supporting reasons. That's the only thing you need to do in the conclusion.
And in terms of vocabulary, any suggestion?
One more time, what was your question, vocabulary?
Yeah, in terms of vocabulary, game vocabulary and grammar, any suggestion?
So, I mean, vocabulary that you can use from this?
Yeah.
Well, what vocabulary do you notice that could be useful? So I strongly suggest using these two sentences at the end here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But is there any specific vocab here related to this topic? Incident is a good word. This is a word that people don't use enough. What is an incident?
Something that happened.
Yes, and usually it has a negative connotation. Like if you have kids at school and the principal calls and says, Mrs. Smith, there was an incident at school today involving your son. You know it's nothing good. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You know they've been up to trouble, up to no good. Incident is good. Everything that we talked about earlier, those are all incidents, events that take place. Imagery, you can use instead of images and photos. This research study, I would integrate. If you don't have like your own research that you could talk about, just remember this one. And if you're new, then note that the examiner is never going to look this up to see if it's correct. As long as it's not cuckoo crazy, as long as it's reasonable and believable, it's fine, because they know you don't have access to Google. They know you don't know what the prompt is going to be ahead of time. So the only thing you're trying to show them is that you know how to structure such a piece of writing. And it's completely okay. In fact, it's expected that you're going to make up examples. You're going to have to make up research because you don't have access to actual research. It's also why it's very important to read very widely, not intensively, but widely, because reading widely will give you a broad range of research studies that you can quote from. So if you're reading, for example, New Scientist, that's a great resource, the newspaper on a daily basis, to at least skim through the news section of it. Okay, you don't have to read it word for word, but you need to fill your head with these kinds of examples that you can just pull out immediately. Other than that, you could also use these first two sentences word for word, because these are not topic specific. So in this case, you've got much of a paragraph here that you can use essentially word for word if you want to memorize it, and then fill in your own example in the middle. And this is what I'd like to do for this writing exercise. Why don't we do this? Let's pretend you're going to keep this, the first part and the last part. I want you to write your own example. Okay. instead of this part, you're going to create your own. And I want you to post it in the chat box, and I'll give you 10 minutes to do it. Use a different example. It can be maybe the same situation. You could talk about COVID-19, but a different aspect of it. Maybe if you want to talk about Toronto and how Toronto looked, then you can use Toronto as an example. If you want to talk about the seriousness of the medical aspect of COVID-19, maybe you want to refer to images of patients on ventilators or something. If you want to talk about the explosion in Lebanon, then that's appropriate, or any of the other images that we've discussed, or maybe something else that you just thought of, okay? So let me give you 10 minutes to write your own example. So you're only writing your own version of something that could fit in here. Okay, I'll give you 10 minutes. And I'll share this document with you in case you need it. I'll put the link in the chat box. Okay, Ala. What do you notice is the difference between this example and your example?
Mm,
There's an element here that makes this into a word picture. The image that accompanied the story was of Oxford Street, one of the busiest streets in Europe, empty. This word, the single word here, has so much power, especially because it's just a single word. Right? You can picture this, right?
yes.
It would be like saying Yonge Street, one of the busiest streets in Toronto, empty, or Queen Street downtown, completely empty. So even the way he's described it has a kind of emotional impact based on the vividness of the description. The example you've got here is the Toronto newspaper. Let's make it more specific. See, notice here too, it's very specific. The BBC News. So
the
let's
CP24 news.
Okay. CP24 News. CP24 News in Toronto. Or you'd say the Toronto Star. So we don't report images. What verb goes with images?
Showed some images.
Good. What's a better word? What do newspapers do? What is that called when something is
Combined some images.
published?
Okay, published some. Yes, published.
This word is more specific. Okay, so Kelly, you're asking about words that you should use. Published some images on how bad the current situation is in hospitals, which showed many patients on air ventilators. Okay. See, I don't know how significant that is. Here, because here in the example, if he's talking about one of the busiest streets in Europe and how it's empty, that is an amazing contrast that he has painted with these words. I can't stress enough what a good sentence this is. Okay. So he's made this contrast, this amazing contrast between the super busy street and how it's now completely empty. What about in your description of the situation? What kind of contrast could you paint, or what could you add to this to really show how serious it is compared to the usual situation?
Like we say, which was not seen with the simple virus attack. Like people like rarely go on air ventilators, but in COVID-19, people needs air ventilator. So like making contrast, or like we can't say which was not empty with low number in the last month before the crisis began or started.
Yeah, you could talk about, I mean, I'm thinking of busy hospitals, right? And when hospitals are too busy, you've got like patients in the hallways. You've got how they're using other rooms that are normally for other purposes in order to just house patients.
Yes, General Toronto Hospital. It's busy hospital.
Okay, is that something you could talk about where normally this hospital, which is, 60 to 80% full, is now well over capacity with rows upon rows of beds with patients on ventilators? This is just an idea. This hospital, the images, a particularly moving image was of Toronto General Hospital, which is normally at about 80% capacity. But now has rows upon rows of patients intubated on ventilators. But now has but is now overcrowded, is now far over capacity with rows upon rows of patients intubated on ventilators. Okay, and then you can add that this drives home the seriousness of the situation at the end of this. Okay, let's have a look at Chalmers. Yahoo News. Back. Yahoo News reported the damage. Reported on. Please report the damage to the police. But if you're a reporter, you're reporting on the damage. Does that distinction make sense?
Yeah, reported on something, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're a reporter, you're reporting on something. But if you're filing a report, then you are reporting the damage, like
Okay.
for an insurance company.
Okay.
Report on the damage that occurred.
That occurred.
Broken buildings. We don't really say broken buildings. Like say a broken toaster or a broken microwave, but not really a building.
Then
Does anyone have a good suggestion for a building that's in the state that we saw in those pictures?
Damaged.
Sorry?
Damaged.
How do you spell that?
Damaged. D-A-M-A-G-E-D. Damage.
Oh, damaged building. Damage doesn't really convey the enormity of what we saw.
Demolished?
Demolished,
Ruined? Ruined?
ruined, collapsed.
Ah, yeah, the collapse. Excuse me.
Not really ruined.
Okay.
Ruined would be like if you spill cranberry juice on a white shirt, it's ruined.
Okay.
You would also talk about ruins, but we won't. The ruins, like if you go exploring old castles in Scotland, right?
Yeah.
The castle ruins, but we don't say that the building has been ruined. We just say there's
The ruins of.
the ruins of a castle, right?
Yeah.
The ruins of the downtown. Buildings, damaged vehicles, spelt with an E,
Ah, okay.
and moreover, flown into the sky. People, not flown, but
Blown.
blown into the sky.
Yeah. It should be blown.
Power of the bomb. Yeah.
Can we exactly say it's a bomb, though? Should it be always the blast in that context?
The sky due to the power of the blast
Blast.
or explosion.
Explosion, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Okay.
Explosion. Whoops, that's not how to spell explosion. Yep.
I have a question with regard to the earlier sentence. Is that incubator or intubator? I thought it's incubator.
Incubators are for babies.
Ah, okay.
Intubation means when they take the tubes from the ventilator and they stick them down into your lungs.
Oh, okay, okay.
So intubation, intubator.
Okay.
Intubated, sorry. I don't think intubator is a word. Intubated, intubation. Okay. Okay, we've got Amar. Okay, let's take a look at Amar's.
Intubation happens in the neck. They open hole in the neck, goes into the trachea.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. Oh, it's not through the mouth? They cut a hole in
it's
your...
on the.
Normally through the
It's
neck.
like if it's serious, there is two ways. With the mouth, it's simple oxygen. If it's intubation, they open a hole into your neck and they go into your trachea, then they intubate you.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeez. Okay. The global world news reported on how the challenge is very big. Okay, the global world news, this would be better if you can give a specific news source. Okay, it doesn't matter which one, just pick one.
Yeah, the CNN news.
Sure. Specific is better. Like I can imagine CNN in my head. I can't imagine global world news. Reported on how the damage is very big, particularly picture of the explosion area before and after the accident. Demonstrated or demonstrates surrounding area. Pictures were shown drove home the seriousness of the tragedy. Good. Very good. You could add a couple details in here to maybe specifically mention the demolished buildings or this 150-meter crater that was created by the blast. You could talk about the grain silos and how those look. You could talk about how, there's that huge warehouse that was next to the warehouse holding this one, and that warehouse was completely just gone. Just doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm going to repeat this lots of times, but what you're trying to do is to make a picture using words. that your reader can actually imagine. Okay, let's look at Kelly's. For example, watch the punctuation. Italy reporting how Venice became a ghost. We say a ghost town. It's a ghost town.
Great.
Ghost town. When the Italian president announced that had to be isolated, that people had to be isolated and not socialized with the spread of the pandemic until further notice. God. The image published, not published the empty Venice, but showed. I would put published here. The published image showed the empty Venice, one of the unique and busiest places in the world and empty. One of the most unique.
Mm-hmm.
The published image showed the empty Venice. Showed an empty Venice, we would say. It's just an idiom. Showed an empty Venice, one of the most unique and busiest places in the world, now empty. Good. I like the fact that you used a specific news source. Very nice. Let's look at Safa's. Remember, it's reported on. We reported the damage to the insurance company. So does this difference make sense for everyone? Because if you choose this topic, then you don't want to make this mistake. We reported the damage to the insurance company. That means you file a report about something. But when you're talking about the news, the BBC reported on the damage after the tornado. Not reported, but reported on.
Okay.
Report on the huge number of cases and deaths in America that accompanied these stories. Accompanied those stories. Showed an increase in the number of deaths due to the coronavirus in the United States. Overcrowding in hospitals, in some stressed hospitals. Let's say overcrowding in, you got hospitals twice. Let's just leave it as overcrowding in some stressed hospitals. In the scale, helping us, which helps us imagine the scale of the disaster. Now, how does an image show this?
Like a huge number of cases intubated and a lot of deaths.
Right, so now I understand based on what you're saying, but do you see how that's not in what you wrote?
Yeah, I didn't like put clarify for example what.
Yes. So this kind of thing is band 7. If you write this, this will take you from an 8 down to a 7 because of that one issue.
Okay.
Because this specific part doesn't really make sense because you haven't explained how an image can show the number of deaths. Doesn't make sense to the reader. It's clear how an image can show overcrowding, but this part doesn't make sense to a reader. Okay, and we've got one more. Okay, Mohammed. Okay, so we don't need this part right now. We're just looking at the example.
Okay, you can start from for instance.
Yep. Yep. Are you able to see my screen?
No.
Are other people able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mohammed, I'm sharing my screen and I've got your writing in a Word document here. You're not able to see it?
No, I can't see it.
Are you on a smartphone? Are you on a phone or are you in front of a computer?
No, in front of my computer.
And you cannot see my screen?
No.
Okay, that's really odd. You've got a window open somewhere that has a Word document that we're looking at right now. What do you see?
No, black screen.
Black screen. How about now?
1 second. No, still black screen.
I think you might have a slow connection. Something's preventing.
Yes, maybe so.
Okay, you'll be able to see it on the recording. So let's look at your example. For instance, following the recent explosion in Lebanon, newspapers first reported the incident without photos. It was a normal accident for most of the people. Let's say, which sounded like a normal accident for most people. It's never most of people, for most people around the world. But after photos and videos, let's forget the videos, okay? Because it's not related to the prompt. But after photos started spreading across TV, news, and social media, all were convinced that it was a serious incident. Everyone could see just how serious, we're not going to say accident, we're going to say incident, how serious this incident was, period. After photos started spreading across TV, news, and social media, everyone could see just how serious this incident was. The images demonstrated the real effect on people, buildings, and surrounding area. This is fine right now. I would like this to be a little bit more specific. What could people see in these images that was so powerful? It doesn't have to be complicated. I'm going to go back to the example that we saw. The image that accompanied the story was of Oxford Street, one of the busiest streets in Europe, empty. right? I can picture Oxford Street busy, and I can imagine Oxford Street empty based on that description. You need to add some more details to create a word picture. Okay. When you say demonstrated the real effect on people, buildings, and surrounding area, what was the real effect? That's what your description should convey. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's it for this one. Are there any questions or comments about what we just did or about the example?
Ian,
Yep.
now you said you don't say most of people, it's most people. Likewise, in earlier assignment, you said you never say some of universities, some of people, but you use of only where when it's come to some of them.
Yes.
So in such context, we use of in between some and them only.
Yep. This is a super common mistake. At least 90% of the time, when you're using some, just say the noun immediately after. It's never some of people. It's just some people. You can say some of the people, but again, I can't easily think of a situation why you would say some of the people as opposed to some people.
Okay.
Some people's always going to work in the same situation, so just forget some of them. When you need to use some of the is, as you mentioned, some of them, some of those, some of us.
Okay. So when it's come to goods, we also we shouldn't say some of frogs. It should be some frogs, right? You shouldn't put off in between. Okay.
Never, never, never. It's never some of plus a noun.
It's common to when it's come to most also. We don't say most of frogs. No, it's just most frogs. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for pointing that out. It's the same rule for most. Never most of people. Never most of products. Most products, most people. Okay, if there are no other questions, why don't we break for 10 minutes? Okay then, let's look at another prompt. So for your writing today, you'll have a choice. You can do either one of these. You can use the same arguments, but I'd like you to come up with your own examples. Okay. So the one we've got here, computers allow us to stay connected with one another, but they also discourage, computers allow people to stay connected with one another, but they also discourage them from going out and socializing. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Okay. Safa, what do you think? Maybe she hasn't returned from break. Who do we have here? Mohammed, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, what do you think, Mohammed? Do computers discourage people from going out and socializing?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I'm just thinking.
Mm-hmm. Maybe another good
Yes,
way. Okay, tell me why you say so.
Because people use, for example, social media for socializing instead of meet people face to face in occasions. They usually send some gift cards on social media rather than talk to them or meet them face to face.
Mm-hmm. Good. Can you think of any specific example that you could use to support your idea here? Remember, for this kind of example, you can use personal examples. It always says, include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or from your own experience. So you can talk about yourself, your friends, your cousins, your uncle, your kids, your boss, your coworkers. Can you think of an example to support the idea of someone who prefers not to meet people face to face and just socializes through social media?
Maybe family distance. For example, I don't have family here in Canada, and the only way I can socialize with them is through internet.
Mm-hmm.
So the majority of foreigners that live in Canada or any part of the world, they socialize with their own family through media such as WhatsApp, Skype, spend a lot of time socializing at home.
Be careful with that example, because in your example, is it social media that's encouraging or discouraging socializing? Or is it simply a function of the distance between you?
I see.
Because your example, like if I think back to when I was much younger, that's kind of the same as long distance calls. So if the question were about, oh, the telephone allows people to stay connected, but it also discourages people from going out and socializing.
I see.
Right?
You're right.
So we need an example of someone who, they could physically leave their house and go see their friends, but they just don't want to or just won't because of social media.
For example, our class on Saturday, we used to gather and do our class, but with the social media, we can do it from home. So this encourage us.
Mm-hmm. And you could say now nobody wants to go back to class the way it was.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good example. And students communicate via social media. That's a good word to use. Instead of through social media. Now nobody wants to return to meeting in person. After COVID. Okay, that's a good example. Any others that you can think of? What about your kids? Do your kids like socializing through social media, or do they prefer to socialize in person?
In person.
Yeah, so you could also disagree with this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, they need to play and to hang out with friends, use playgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they prefer it more than social media, I think, because they don't have even access to WhatsApp and Facebook and this social media
Okay,
tools.
so keep in mind, whenever we talk about these examples, I want you to keep in mind that you can make things up for this examination, and in fact, you need to make things up if you don't have an example that's true that'll support one side or the other side. Right? So don't mention things like kids don't have access to social media, because that will
Yeah.
that'll be off topic for these prompts, right?
Yeah.
So you could say, even though our children have access to all the social media, what could you say? They use it only because they can't meet physically with their friends currently. Right? But they much prefer meeting in person rather than using social media. That could be what you say. All right, you can use really personal examples here. Right? Or you can go another route and talk about research studies that say the average person now meets with their friends much less often than they did before social media was prevalent. Now people instead, they spend a lot more time on social media. We actually saw in writing task 1 some research about the amount of time that people are now spending with different kinds of media. Remember that? And it showed that the amount of time that people spend on media in total has doubled since before the time of social media. That's research that you could quote. What does prevalent mean? Does everyone know the word prevalent?
Preferred?
Priority?
It means common.
Comment?
Yes. Something is common, something is prevalent. Okay, then you can make up the amount, like 4, 5, 6 hours per day, right? And say hours per day. Okay. No time left for socializing in person, or much less time left. No time left, much less time left for socializing in person. I could talk about I know people who live very close to each other, like a couple blocks away, and they rarely see each other because they're communicating almost daily through social media. So they feel like they're close to one another, but they rarely actually see each other. few blocks apart, but communicate almost exclusively. This is a good phrase, almost exclusively through social media. Does anyone else have a good example that would work for this prompt? In that case, let's read an example. And this one takes the opposite point of view. The computer has revolutionized the way we communicate nowadays. That's a good phrase that you can use, that this whole sentence, you can use it word for word. However, its convenience hasn't led to us substituting real face-to-face interactions for virtual contact. And for me, I would say it has had the opposite effect. Say virtual contact. Nearly every household these days has a computer in their house, and it is mostly used to keep in touch with other people. However, by keeping in touch with people, this means interacting with them via social media like Facebook. We like each other's posts and photographs, but this is no substitute for going out and seeing friends. Last week, my cousin posted a picture of himself in a pub in London on Facebook, and I immediately recognized it as the pub around the corner from my house, so I went to meet him. If I hadn't seen the photo on the computer, I wouldn't have gone out, and this shows that computers can actually encourage people to go out and meet their family and friends. Okay, so what is his main point in this paragraph?
Social media encourage us to go out and socialize.
Yeah, and his evidence is just the example that he put. Second paragraph, on top of this, computers also remind us to be more sociable. So the first example is you see fun things on Facebook, and as a result, you're inspired to go out and do those things. Second example is how computers actually remind people. As I've gotten older and now have more responsibilities, it has become harder to go out and see friends. However, my computer and the social network sites I use remind me when it is friends' birthdays, and so I try and go out and celebrate with them. Last month, I was at work when I got a notification saying that it was my best friend's birthday. I had completely forgotten, so I got in touch with her to say happy birthday and ask what she was doing to celebrate. She said she was out with friends in a bar and hadn't contacted me because she thought that I would be busy. I went to meet her and bought her a gift on the way, which made her really happy. This is further evidence highlighting how computers help me get out more and socialize. Okay, what's the main point in this paragraph?
The social media make us more sociable.
How?
By let us memorize the important or to remember how to celebrate with friends and neighbor.
Yeah, when Facebook or LinkedIn tell you that it's one of your contacts' birthdays, that's a fantastic excuse to get in touch with that person and simply wish them happy birthday, right? So
Yeah.
this gives you many more opportunities for socializing, because if you didn't have these apps with these reminders, you would never know about this stuff. So I think that's an easy example to give. You could also talk about maybe LinkedIn, how LinkedIn shows you what kind of organizations people belong to. So the kind of people you connect with on LinkedIn are people who have similar professional interests. And if you didn't find that out through LinkedIn, you would perhaps never join those organizations. You would never get in touch with those people to connect with them. Right, so this is an easy way to expand your social network or your professional network. And LinkedIn is just a starting point where it starts off as an online conversation, but then usually it gets deeper by moving offline. So you either call each other or you get together at some kind of conference or event, some kind of professional event. That's an easy argument to make about how social media can actually encourage people to socialize more. Right? And while it's true that some people just prefer to accumulate friends on Facebook, other people, their goal is to actually meet those people in person. And you can say that because I meet all these new people through Facebook, you can say I'm too busy at work, I meet lots of people through Facebook, and this is the only way I'm able to make new friends. Because work time doesn't leave me a lot of time to go out and meet new people otherwise. Right. The other thing that's true for many people who immigrate to Canada is that they don't have big social networks when they're here. Right? Your social network is back home. So many people are kind of lonely, so they make friends through social media. And this is how they create their real life social network. So yeah, you might have several hundred Facebook friends, but a few of those will actually become real life close friends in your community. Right. So easy to talk about?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like everyone to write an example, either showing how social media discourages people from socializing in real life, or how social media encourages people to socialize in real life. Remember the feedback you got on the last example that you wrote. Try and paint a picture using words. The reader needs to be able to see what you're talking about. Okay, I'll give you another 10 minutes.
Mr. Yang, kindly can I see the prompt? Just I would like to know if we have to write about both views or just we give our opinion for.
This one is agree, disagree.
Okay. So you have to stick with only one opinion. I couldn't write about that. Like sometimes the social media, it's help us to be more socializable, or
That's a great question. So Safa's just pointing out, she's wondering what type of question it is. We didn't talk about that very much in today's class. This second one is, to what extent do you agree or disagree? When you get this kind of prompt, answer only from one side. Don't do a nuanced response where you say, oh, I agree in some ways, I disagree in other ways. Don't do that. Just say, I agree or I disagree, and give two supporting reasons when you get to this one. Okay, first one is Chalmers. Through social media. So you're not bonding with a computer, you're bonding through computers.
Okay.
With the help of computers or through computers?
Okay.
We'll take away children's personalities. So if you say this, it's automatically confusing. Don't know what that means.
What is bonding, Jan?
Bonding?
Mm-hmm.
Getting close together. Like bond literally means glue together.
I see.
So whenever I take my kids out for a walk, we spend a lot of time bonding. Children should know how to tackle a situation when it comes to an argument in person. Okay. So you don't need to talk about the consequences because that's not part of the question, right?
Okay.
It's just about whether or not it happens. They're very literal about this. If the question doesn't ask you about the consequences of something, don't talk about them because talking about them is considered off topic.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Argument in person, which can't be experienced through social media. So if you look at the question, it's not talking about if this is good or bad. It's just whether it's true or not. But your example is related to whether or not this is good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to work for this prompt.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to take you down the wrong path.
Mm-hmm.
They call something like this tangentially related, which means it's related to the theme, but it's kind of off topic as far as the prompt is concerned. Okay, let's look at the next one. This one belongs to Amar. I can say that computers are discouraging us from going out and socializing. And cell phone screens. Cell phone is a modifier for screens. We don't pluralize modifiers. They don't have enough time left for going out and socializing in person. Yeah, good example. Good. Just remember, as a convention, when we're writing formally, that numbers that have one syllable are spelled out. So 1 to 10, spell out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Next one is Allah's. My computer and social media apps help.
Yeah. Because two and
I'm gonna remember my family and friends. My family and friends' birthday. So this should be possessive, right? Because birthdays that belong to your friends. But you've got my family's and friends' birthdays. My family, we want to say members. And friends' birthdays. Now, this is a singular concept. It's, in this case, which refers to this whole fact, right?
yeah, which allows.
Yes. This is a clear example of how computers and social media help us to be social. Okay, good. What could you add anything to this to further develop it?
I used to think like what to add, but
So this is not a very clear example. It's not a sufficiently developed example. In order to extend this, you should discuss something specific to you, like a specific incident as we saw in the Band 9 model.
Yeah.
I would say, I would change this. It's, for me personally, help me to remember my family. Okay. Here. I would say, just last week, what happened, Ala, last week?
Just last week, my computers and social media.
Let's see. Facebook.
Notification reminded me
That it was my cousin's birthday. Okay, so what happened?
So I went out and celebrated with them.
So you could say that I hadn't talked to this cousin in a long time because it's not my first cousin, it's like a distant cousin. But this was a good opportunity to get in touch. It was, when you get this notification, it's obviously a good excuse to say hello. And as a result, they invited me to their party.
Yeah.
So if it hadn't been for Facebook, I would not have spent time with my cousins. If you use unreal conditional, if it hadn't been for Facebook, I would not have gone out to. So I called her up to wish her a happy birthday, and she invited me to her party at a restaurant near my house. And we don't even need to put that detail. Restaurant where I had the opportunity to reconnect, or let's just say to connect with her friends as well as other distant family members I had not seen in many years. This practically writes itself. All I'm doing is I'm just in my mind generating the imagery for what this would look like. I'm just imagining, oh yeah, I get a little bing on Facebook, notifies me that it's my cousin's birthday. So, I'll give her a call, see what's up. What would happen? She'd probably invite me to her birthday because that would be the natural thing to do. Where would the birthday be? It'd probably be at a restaurant. What would happen there? I'd run into people I'd never met, and I would run into people I hadn't seen in a long time. So I'm just describing the pictures that are popping into my head as I just imagine this event taking place. There's not a lot of creativity going on here. I am literally just writing what I'm imagining.
Ian?
Yeah.
Here you corrected as helps. For me, it goes as help because it says my computer and social media apps. It's talking about two things.
And so which one are you referring to?
The very first sentence of Muhammad, oh Allah, for my computer and social media apps help me, right?
Yes, sorry. My computer and social media apps help me. Why did I put S there?
Okay.
No, he had S. Sorry. No S.
Okay, so you have to take it off, right?
Yeah,
okay.
that's why I put it in red. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right, let's look at Kelly's. So Kelly, we're looking for a good example.
Yeah, I forgot to mention the example.
So that's the main point.
That's
Okay.
the main point.
So just right now, we don't need to write it. Give me an example, either of how social media encourages or discourages you from physically getting together with people.
Encouragement. Yeah, encourage me because people in nowadays, they just talk on computer, and I'm a very sociable person. I feel uncomfortable talking to people through computer.
Mm-hmm.
So a good example is that because I'm very sociable, I like to interact with people face to face. I feel a little bit cold when I'm talking to someone on the computer constantly. So I need to communicate with people.
Okay, but you have to tie it back to the prompt. Keep thinking about the prompt, which is computers either encourage or discourage people from communicating face to face. So the fact that you don't like it is one thing, but how does that encourage you to actually go out and meet people in person?
So I contact them through a cell phone or or through computer. But I don't socialize them through the computer. I just contact them and then we see face to face. I don't spend hours in socializing on the computer.
Okay, so to bring it back to the prompt,
Yeah.
If we just look at the wording here, if you talk about whether you like it or not by itself, that's off topic. Because the question is not whether or not you like or enjoy using social media. It's the computer actually encourages or discourages us from going out and socializing. So in the previous examples, we didn't talk about whether or not we like social media. We just talked about, oh yeah, so when I get these Facebook notifications or LinkedIn notifications, that reminds me to get in touch with that person and wish them a happy birthday, as an example. And what that often leads to is that person then replying to us and we start talking, and then the person invites you out to go see them. So the conversation starts online, but then it moves offline. So this question is more about how they encourage or how they discourage socializing in person. That's the focus.
I see.
Let me write that down. Whoops, discourage socializing in person.
So it's all depending how we're using the media, I guess. Yeah. So if it's only to connect with people to encourage you to socialize, then yes.
So, but you have to paint a picture using words as to how that happens. Like, what is the mechanism by which that happens? And you can see that very clearly in the example response. Okay, so he talks about how social network sites send reminders about birthdays. And for that reason, he tries to go out and celebrate with people when he gets these reminders. Then he gives, so this is the idea in the abstract.
I see.
Right?
So getting notifications.
Yes, so it's just an explanation, but it's abstract. So now he gives the example to make it come to life. Last month I was at work. Easy to picture. You can see a guy sitting in an office. When I get a notification saying it's my best friend's birthday, easy to visualize. I'd forgotten, so I got in touch with her to say happy birthday, ask what she was doing to celebrate. She said she was out with friends in a bar and hadn't contacted me because she thought I'd be busy. I went to meet her and bought her a gift on the way, which made her really happy. So this picture that he's painting with words is showing us, rather than telling us, how social media encourages meeting in person, socializing.
Okay.
Words can tell and words can show. It's far more powerful when words show. That's why they're telling you to use examples. It's not some weird IELTS requirement. If you want your writing to be effective, it needs to follow these best practices that we're talking about. This is not just some wacky stuff for the examination. This is very much a super powerful life skill when it comes to communication. Okay, so last, no, Safa, I see two of yours. Okay, I'm going to take the second one.
Yeah, please. I need some editing on the second one.
Before I put that, I said something that might be useful to some of you. The conversation starts online, but then moves offline. Okay. Belong to groups, probably multiple groups. This doesn't work too well. Let's look at the last part. For example, immigrants or students studying abroad are able to contact their families and friends back home, which will help them to feel happy and less lonely. So you're talking about real world relationships, but this is specifically about in-person versus virtual socializing. So what you're talking about here is virtual socializing, right?
Yeah. Like all the immigrants and the student study abroad, if they don't have like a computer or internet, they will be unsocialized and feeling lonely here in this country.
But that's not what the question is about.
Like, do you mean that like the media help people to be socialized with the new people, you mean?
Well, it says computers allow people to stay connected with one another. So this is a given. The first part of the prompt is always a given, which means that's the context, that's the situation. You can't argue about that, right? This is true. This is not part of the argument. The argument is, but they also discourage them from going out and socializing. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this part?
Okay, so if I want to put this, for example, I need to speak more about even the people they contact, like spend time with their family and the friends and people they met them personally here. Like that, I could.
So not every example that you think, but not every example is going to be suitable for this. So what you're saying is true. Absolutely, that Facebook makes it easy to stay connected with your family back home, but that's not related to the prompt. So if it's talking about discouraging people from going out and socializing, this relates to how you socialize with people who are local for you. Right, so with people that are local, let's say family or friends, peers, co-workers that are in Toronto or the GTA, when does the computer or do social media apps encourage you to actually get in touch with these people in person, or do they discourage that? How does that work? That's what the question is about. So in the sample response, he keeps saying that the reminders that he gets on social media, like when people post photos and things, then that, when they see those photos, that encourages them to actually get in touch with that person, which leads to a face-to-face meeting. Or the reminders that it's someone's birthday, that those can easily lead to face-to-face meetings. As a result, his argument is that social media encourages face-to-face socializing, not that it discourages. He's disagreeing with this.
Yeah, I could understand. Thank you.
All right, that is your challenge for today, for this assignment. It's always due Mondays at noon. The revision is always due by Tuesday at noon. If you don't post it at those times, I cannot guarantee that I'm going to mark it. The revision process is critical for your learning. You have to do it Monday by noon so that you have an opportunity to revise your work by Tuesday at noon, which is when I'm going to put the corrections in. Okay. So the focus here is on developing these examples that people can visualize. Remember, extend, extend, extend. Your writing should be up to 350 words. Okay, don't go over that because that's not realistic. You won't be able to do that on the actual examination. Don't worry too much about timing right now. If you can't do this slowly, you can't do it quickly. Just focus on quality, focus on the quality of the description. Okay. Any questions? Good. In that case, have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing your work on Monday.
Thank you, Anne.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
For today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, John. Take care.
Thank
See ya.
you. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.